Hello everyone, you've just tuned in to a new episode of History in the Streets. This is a good time to go ahead and tag and share. Hit that left hand button that says SHARE, and it helps my community grow. When we're talking about Black history, this is something new that's online. So we want to spread this community and this information. So it takes you to share. Please share, share, share. Tag, tag, tag. Thanks, Gaga. Hey, Autumn. Thank you for joining me today. Hey, Darlene. Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of History in the Streets. We have a lot of information to cover today, so you will not want to miss this. If you notice, I am standing on the corner of Long Street and Monroe. For those of you that don't know, this is in the Bronzeville district. That was what it was historically known as. But now it is the east side of Columbus. I think today what we're going to do is, I have a question for you. So come this way. I did some research earlier this week and on the Elks. If you are very familiar with the Elks is one of the oldest fraternal organizations here in the nation. Not as old as the Masons, but just as. It was an organization that helped build the communities, the Black communities up at a very unique time. Many of us are familiar with the Elks because they did parades. When I was a little girl, they would have parades and they would go down Long Street and they would have the East High Tigerettes, they would have the Elks, they would have the Masons. I think the Masons, they're called Shriners, and they had those long big hats on. Those again are the Elks. And I have a question for my historians out there, or people who grew up in the east side of a community. What corner of Long Street and Monroe was the Elks home at? I know originally the first one was down on Long Street. I posted that in the Columbus history page. But I'm curious to know what corner, because I do know that for a fact, the newest building that they made or built was, or bought, I should say, was on the corner of Long and Monroe, but I don't know which corner. So it could be this corner, it could have been that corner. As you see, that corner, the building is relatively new. Or it could have been right next door to the Urban League, which is across the street there. Or even this street. From my understanding, it was the Davis home that it was bought from. But that's all I know. So if you guys could help me with that information, I'd really appreciate it. Now today we have some exciting information to share regarding Black news because, as I said, I'm on Monroe and Long. Last time we met, we were on that side of Monroe. This side, we're on the north side of Monroe, where we are going to specifically knock on some neighbors' doors on this particular street, and we're going to talk about the history of their home. We've been able to identify some particular legends that lived in this community, but we want to know, do the people who currently live in the home have any idea? Again, as we share these stories, I want to share these stories with you. But more importantly, I want to share these stories with the homeowners so that they know to preserve the home and they know the value of the home, okay? So we're going to have a little bit of fun. It's going to be a little spontaneous today. Hopefully some people are home. Some people may not even be comfortable talking about anything regarding their historical home. Some people may ignore me. Some people may know way too much and want to talk too long about it because they get so excited with all of the history, information, and stories they've learned since they've owned the home. So we just don't know. We're just going to go at it and go with the flow. And you will learn, though, through this, you will learn the history of these particular homes that still exist and possibly make some new friends of the current residents that live in these homes today. Now I'm walking backwards, so if you hear the cameraman shout out loud, you know why. Now our second step is going to be with my friend Ben, who I met maybe a couple of weeks ago when I was on the other side of the street. This week I'm going to specifically talk with him because he lives at 175 North Monroe, which is a significant home, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. The first house I want to go to and tell you guys about is at 184 North Monroe. Come on. Now keep in mind, this particular community was plotted in 1872, which specifically at that time, the African Americans did own homes in Columbus, and I've told you about that. But this particular neighborhood was created of more than likely white people, professionals, more than likely people who were a part of the, who worked at the railroads that were right up the street. Doing a good job making sure I don't fall. Thank you very much, Sean Yates. Hey, Bill Wilson. It was between Long and Mount Vernon. I mean, I was told it was Long and Monroe. So I need an address. If you can help me with that, that would be very helpful. Okay. So we're going to 184 North Monroe, and I told you I'm going to share with you guys specifically who lived in these homes and why it is that we're sharing these stories and why is it that we have to preserve some of the story so that we can know about preserving the land in the home. The house we're getting ready to talk about is at 184. And this was owned by Maddie Matthews. Maddie Matthews and her husband actually lived in this home. They married in 1927. They married at noon and they moved in the home, or I should say Maddie moved in the home with her husband who had already owned the home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that was a pretty quick wedding. They probably did it in somewhat of a justice of a peace, or maybe they jumped over a broom. But they got married at noon, and she moved in the house at 4 o'clock. Mrs. Matthews lived here for 37 years, or I should say Mr. Matthews lived here, but he worked for the Neal House. Very familiar with the Neal House. They were a family that were prominent in the anti-slavery movement. So they hired blacks at the Neal House. Many of our family members worked for the Neal House, and he was one of them, and he worked for them for 37 years. Mrs. Matthews retired from the State Highway Patrol in 1972. And it seems that Elijah and Carrie Matthews lived here prior, or I should say after they did, or before them, which could have been a relative or so. So I'm gonna knock on the door. I don't know if anyone is home, but I think this is sort of fun to just see if they know who it is that lived here, and what we might find out is the family still lives here. Come on, go with me. So this is pretty interesting. So again, we don't know who lives in these homes. Ooh, there's somebody answering. Hi, there's a camera there. My name is Rita Fuller-Yates, and I'm a local historian.
Okay.
And we have a show called History in the Streets.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
And we walk down historical communities like this.
Okay.
And we do a little bit of research about the houses.
Okay.
And then we try to see what it is that we know versus what it is that you know.
Okay.
And then we might come up with something new and
Sure.
share something that we both didn't know.
All right. So that's
Okay.
wonderful.
So the information I just shared with them is I knew that this was owned by a Maddie Matthews.
I think that's right.
And she lived here with her husband, who worked for the Mill House.
I think that's right. The hotel down on where the Huntington building is now.
That is correct. And she worked at the Highway Patrol and retired in 1972.
Okay.
And from my understanding, there was a Matthews that lived here prior to them.
Yes.
But I don't know if they were related. Do you know?
I think they were related. I think they were, what I've heard is that they were, well, she was the daughter of somebody who lived here in 1940. So if you go back to the 1940 census,
Okay.
that's online. So
That's
I went
the
back,
last one.
went back and looked up, and there was, I think she was in the house, but her father was there. Well, I was told some guy stopped by maybe 6 months ago. He said, "Well, I lived in this house," and so apparently, like, the dad was up here and he was mean, and so everybody else was sort of in the house, and so. I mean, that's what I know. I mean, my understanding was that the house was built, they say, somewhere around 1890, and that these houses, this house, and this house were called, quote, the Three Sisters.
I love that.
So and if you look, they're all very similar. Very similar. So that's all I know. That is kind of what I know. I mean, we did a little bit. It's hard to do research in Columbus, but there was some old picture of somebody standing out here, and they said 1882, 1883, but I'm not sure if that was the case. I mean, because that picture could have been taken here, or it could have been taken somewhere else in Columbus.
I've heard about that story, and it actually was someone who was maybe a physician.
Okay.
Maybe the picture was.
Could be. It was two old handsome ladies.
Oh, okay.
So, but I don't know what was here in the 1880s.
Well, it seems like what you know is very similar to what I know.
Yes.
So in Black history, we call that fact checking.
Right.
Because a lot of times it is just oral.
Right.
But that's why I love to have these
Sure.
conversations, because you just shared something with me that I didn't know, and that these houses are called the sister houses.
Yes.
Here's a card for you.
Right. Well, thank you.
Please follow us online. We do
Great.
this every week. We would love
that's
to
wonderful.
have you as a follower. Let's say hello to everyone. If you want to say your name, that'll be nice.
I'm Kip Wallers. We've lived here for about a year. I think the guy who we bought it from was somebody who took the house and redid it. So apparently the addition on the back was falling down, so we restored that. Apparently the old floorboards in the house are sort of or not floorboards, but some of the old timbers were used for the floors. So that's kind of neat. So
that's really using your
So he did
materials effectively.
did a nice job. Did a nice job restoring it. It's a little bit squishy when you walk, but you know how it goes. And where do you live? Are you a Columbus native or?
I am. I grew up on Long and Champion.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah. So I grew up in the midst of all of this, not knowing all of this.
Wow. Okay.
So
That's
as a
neat.
historian, it captures me every day, all day.
Well, the other house that when we're getting ready to sell it, because we lived here, so it was at 117 Miami, which is the corner of Long and Miami.
Okay.
So it's the house right across from that church over there. Now I don't know what that church was across on the corner of Long and Miami, and I don't know if you know what that church was either. Now it's something that is not a mainstream denomination. They go to church on Saturdays. So it's not.
Type of Episcopal.
Could be, yeah. I mean, I don't quite know, but but that house had been vacant for probably 10 years. They restored it, so we purchased that. Then this house came open. We had my We had my son, or my wife's son, came to live with us, and he went to Columbus State, so we needed a bigger place.
Okay.
And so we moved here, but we kept that house as a rental, and now I think we're probably going to sell it. But you know, but we love the neighborhood. 117 Miami.
Okay.
So it's a duplex. It's a duplex, or it's a condo. So it's 117 and 119.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure I probably have done some work, and I just can't.
I mean, well, it's an interesting. It's a different sort of thing because there's one side of the street which is single family houses, and then the other is more sort of rentals and duplexes. And what I was told was that back in the day, instead of being split vertically, they were split. It was split by floors horizontally. And so there are 3 stories, and so that you would have had a family living in the 3rd story, a family living in the 2nd story, a family living in the 1st story. I mean, the people
almost like a brownstone.
Yeah, and because the people that I talked to about that were the people across. There was the Masonic temple across the way. You know you know which one I'm talking about,
yes.
Right? And so
on Long Street.
On Long Street, right?
Yes.
And so they were telling. So some guy was telling me about the story of that. I mean, that actually. I mean, that's a place where.
Yeah, that has a lot of history.
Yeah, I mean, that if you were when we get back to the real world, I mean, having a talk over there and gleaning some of the stories out of that would be really good.
I don't want to interrupt you, but we got to move on.
All right, I'll sit here and I'll sit here and yak about this all day.
Thank you.
Well, that I really appreciate your conversation today, and actually you just coming out and joining the conversation.
Well, great.
Thank you very
good luck
much.
to you. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
So, as you guys see, we are trying to identify people who live in this community on Monroe and Long, who currently live in the community, and who may know their history of their home, or they may not. Most of them do, but some of them don't. And I think it's still unique to find a little bit of the story that you may have not known. Black history is normally about oral history, and it takes people talking and sharing. And then now is the time to begin documenting, because we do now have freedom to do that. And that's why we're doing these via video, is we're documenting all of this information. So, as you just learned, he can turn the camera around. What I learned just a minute ago is these 3 homes were called sister homes. Okay, now we're going over to my friend Ben's house. I told you guys about Ben because he has a home that is a legend, basically lived here, a very valuable person that we'll talk about in a minute. He does realize that they did live here, but what I think is unique about the home is that some of the history is still existing when it pertains to what it is that they did for a living. And we'll talk about that in a second. Ben. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Say hello. This is my friend Ben. I met him a couple weeks ago, like I said. He opened up his porch to me while he was cooking out and enjoying his day, and we sat and talked a little bit about what he knew about the house. And one thing that I wanted to tell you that I thought was funny was you told me that the lady's name was Alberta Banner, right?
I was thinking that was the name. Was it close?
No, well, or Turner. Which one
Turner.
did you say?
I said Banner.
Banner.
Okay.
It's correct because that was her maiden name.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I said Dr. Turner.
Yeah, okay.
And you were like, I thought it was Banner.
Oh, yeah.
So you were correct. Her name is Dr. Alberta Banner Turner.
Turner. Okay, yeah, because my grandma gave me that information. She thought I needed to know about the history of the house. And I thought it was pretty neat. I was like, man, she was like one of the first African American ladies to graduate at Ohio State. I'm like,
yes.
I said, man, that's pretty cool, you know.
Yeah, she was the first one to get her doctrines.
Okay.
So did your grandmother know her?
I don't think so. I mean, she passed now, but I don't know if she knew her. But I know my neighbor out back, I think she knew it or knew of them.
Okay.
I can show you the
Well,
house.
that's what we wanted to do. I wanted to show them the back so that they can see. So, Dr. Alberta Turner lived here as a granddaughter of, I got to make sure I look the names correctly, of Bertha Edwards. Okay? Now, when they lived here, they owned or I should say, no, let me get this right. No, her daughter's name was Bertha. It was the children's name was Bertha and Mabel. Mabel's had Alberta. Their mother was Eliza Edwards. Eliza Edwards owned a laundromat, and she would cook or she would clean for the whites, and they would come and pick up their clothes once they were made or clean. But I want to show you in the back how it actually looks so that you can see the history of it.
Yeah, sure, no problem with that. Go this way, watch your stuff.
They also, one of the daughters, her name was Mabel, was a beautician.
Really?
Yes, so they had a beauty parlor and a laundromat.
Oh, go ahead. Hey, should be open.
So it's safe to say that these were true pioneers of entrepreneurs. What I love about this back,
See now, this lady here, like these houses when we originally got them, like both these, like we used to have to snake, or like when their basement backed up, we got a drain down there, so in the basement. But she the one lived here, Miss Curlin. I think either she knew her, she lived here like the longest out of everybody. This neighbor comes and goes, but somebody at both of them now. But we added a clean out probably like 5 years ago, so that if I work out of town, we wouldn't have to get in my basement. So, you know,
it's safe to say that both of these homes were almost combined, and this was her backyard.
Right.
And they would carry the lines, because of course there wasn't a washer and dryer.
Right.
So they would attach the line from this house to that house.
Okay.
And the workers literally would work out of that house.
Because when we first moved here in '92, it was clotheslines out here like the old school.
That's right.
You know, and I was like, man, these are some clothesliners. You know what I mean? Like if you just running around back here. But
so those are clothesliners that were positioned there for her business. But the lye and the bleach that they used at the time was so strong, you couldn't really do it inside of your home.
Okay.
So you had to have something that was more manufactured like that to do the actual washing in, and then they would hang it out here.
Okay.
And then her workers, which was on her census as well, must have lived in the basement or here as well, because they were all listed on the census.
Right, because this basement kind of sectioned off where
it does look like it's like maybe apartments or
yeah,
rooms.
like I got like a bar down there, and I'm building a restroom right here, a weight room, and it's all pretty set up, pretty neat. Like it's the whole house down there, basically.
Well, it makes sense considering there was a beauty parlor as well as a basically a laundromat.
It's kind of cluttered now. I don't know if you would want to see that, but I mean.
Oh no, we don't want to see that.
Okay, that's good. Okay, but yeah, I mean, but other than that, I mean, I always liked the history of this house because, I mean, this is neighborhood because like we always grew up on 22nd and Broad. So I always wanted to get in the same zip code. But we used to always come down here when they had the Old Town East Festival on that side of Monroe. They used to always do like yard sales, and they had blocked that part off. Then we moved here, they started doing the coming home and all that, you know. So it was pretty neat. But they still do the Old Town, but now they pushed it like on the other side of Broad and Oak. Over that way. But this still originally was Old Town, you know. I always liked it for the big houses, you know. We grew up in a big house on 44 North 22nd. It was like huge.
Well,
so I always liked it, the big houses like them, you know.
As I told you before, you have a gym. You're obligated to keep it.
Oh yeah, I am. I'm trying to catch up and get my fence built. I'm trying to get all this stuff worked out. So.
Okay.
You know,
and remember we talked about making sure you tell the story to your friends.
Okay, yeah.
And everyone, so we can keep the story alive.
Okay.
Did I give you a card last time?
No.
I want to make sure you get a card. Are you on social media?
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't look at it every day.
You can follow us on there.
Okay, yeah. I can
Okay.
do that. Okay.
All right. Thank
Yeah,
you, Ben.
Appreciate y'all.
I appreciate
They
you.
should have got me doing some work. That's cool. So, yeah, totally.
Well, let us know if we can be of any service or help to you, Ben.
Okay, I
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
again.
Hey, you got it. Thanks for giving me
Hey, Cheryl,
a
thanks
spot,
for watching.
Hey,
Now, don't be acting funny when people stop by talking about, hey, Ben, can I see your house?
That's all right. Yeah. That's cool. Hey, thanks a lot.
Hey, Rika, thanks for watching. Hey, Brian, thanks for watching. Rodney, Jerry Ross, thanks for watching. Okay, so we have a couple of other places I want to make sure you guys see. But before we do, you know, I'm really trying to make sure you guys walk away with true information regarding our historical figures. And as we had talked about, we do not want to miss when we just talked about Dr. Alberta Turner. We've got a 1-minute clip I want you guys to watch regarding her so y'all can know why she is valuable. Alberta Banner was born March 1909 in Chicago to James and Mabel Banner. She was the first member of her family to receive a high school diploma, graduating from East High in 1925. Alberta was technically the first black woman to receive a doctorate in psychology from OSU in 1937. Alberta would marry John Turner in 1935, and she would become the first person to buy a home in Livingston Heights. Dr. Turner will forever be remembered for her courage to fight for equality, but also her tenacity to challenge white-only premises in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool, as you can see, Dr. Alberta not only lived here on Monroe, and you're able to see her lifestyle, but you're able to see why it is that we're talking about preserving her home, or preserving at least the story of her home. She was the first African-American person to receive her doctrine in psychology from Ohio State University, which is huge, in 1937. So again, we have to pay homage to those individuals that started the conversation. Thank you, Dr. Alberta. Now, I'm standing in front of 195 North Monroe Avenue. Again, we're going to knock on the door. I don't know these individuals, so hopefully they're home, and hopefully I can share a couple of nuggets that I've learned about their house. Do y'all like this double door? Now this is some true old school legend right here. I love that. Although we're used to double doors today, I love that it's the original aluminum. Do you guys know the history of double doors? Why is it that double doors became very popular instead of just one big farmhouse door? Well, back in the farmhouse days when they were building traditional homes, of course, they normally were made for farms and farmers. And a lot of times the animals would venture. Hello, how are you? I hate to bother you. My name is Rita Fuller-Yates, and I'm a local historian. And I have a show that's called History in the Streets. And I literally go around to these historical communities and I talk with the neighbor or the people who live in the house to see what it is that you know about the house. And I learn from you and I share things that I possibly know. But it seems like you probably know a lot more than I do. Do you have a couple of minutes to share? Do you have a couple of minutes to share? I'll definitely keep my social distancing.
Okay.
And I will stand way over here, and I'm gonna put a card down so you know who we are.
Okay.
And the biggest thing is learning who you are and possibly learning about what it is that you know about this home.
Okay.
From my understanding, what I know about it is that an Ollie Angel was a maid, and she lived here in 1922. And then only thing else I know is that she married someone by the last name of Terry, and they lived here, from my understanding, for a long time.
Until present.
And are you a Terry?
Yep. That was my grandfather, yeah. Yeah.
Did y'all see that? Did y'all see that? So, let me calm down. So, y'all have been living here since 1922?
Well, the family
Your
has.
family.
I've been in and out. I was married and moved out, and I'm back in again. I've been here now for about 10, 12 years or more. Mother and dad are both dead, and of course, granddad been dead for years. But Ollie Angel, she was the owner, and he married her, and he became the owner when she died.
What was his name?
Oscar.
Oscar. And what did he do for a living, or what? She was a maid.
Yeah, he worked at the Columbus Glass Factory. I think Columbus Foundation of Glass Factory is in the South End, and that's where his son, my father, George, worked, and my mother eventually she worked there too. That's how they met, at the Columbus Glass Factory Foundry.
Now, did you guys also own the property that used to be in the back, and it used to be?
Yeah, it was all one thing. There was a big 4-car garage, 2-story, 4-car garage. It was rented out to the family across the street, 844 East Spring Street. The Williams, he was a mechanic, and he had a garage. He did car repairs in there.
So did you know originally that was Charles's sergeant's? What, that was his business back there?
No, but I know it was a big building. It was a 4-car garage. Had a toilet tied to it, and it was 2-story.
So do you remember, what is your memory of the community as a young boy?
What do you mean?
As far as the connections, and it seemed like from the stories everyone worked together.
Oh yeah, it was very close-knit. Everybody knew one another and watched out for one another, yeah.
It was segregated, or was there some whites that still lived on the street?
There were 1 or 2 whites, mostly were blacks, so. And the property on the corner there was vacant, and there was a house right in the middle there that's vacant now, and Mr. Churchill and Matthews. And
Does Mr. Churchill still live there?
no, he died years ago. He was one of the old families. And
So
of course,
from my understanding, is this the oldest house?
I'm not sure.
I forget. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, this is the oldest house in the community.
Maybe.
And
Yeah,
that was
because
what-
there were the cornerstones. There used to be 2 big rocks. We have a neighbor down the street there. He collects them. You might see them in his yard down there. That's where my former in-laws lived. And there was one stone right where this big tree is, and that was for Monroe. And then there was one right on the corner here, and that was for Spring Street. And those were two stones that marked the street for Monroe and for Spring Street. And they're big stones. They're still in his yard. We gave him one, but he's collected stones around here.
Now, what is your name again?
I'm Donald.
Donald.
Yeah, middle initial Oscar. And my grandfather's name.
And you're Terry?
And Terry, yeah.
Well, I appreciate your conversation today. as a historian, a lot of times our Black history is very oral because we can't, of course, identify it. So now we're able to capture this and store the information. But we want first accounts. We don't want to be like, I heard Mr. Terry say it. So now we have you on camera as the first source for this particular house, which is what we are looking for.
I think I'm about the oldest one here now. I'm 93.
You 93?
Yeah.
You go, boy!
Yeah.
You go, boy! And look at that staircase. Woo! Lord! Well, whoever in your family understood preserving and preservation, they did a very good job, even when it pertains to your doors.
Yeah. Well, we try to keep it up.
Y'all did a good job.
Good.
Good job, Terry family. Congratulations and thank you. And there's a card for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See, those are the gems that we continue to look for in our journey, is people who live in the house, families, legacies that's been built. When we pass our house down from one generation to the next, not only does the house remain, but the stories in the house remain. And Mr. Terry is a perfect example of that. We got first source count. I love that stuff. I love it, love it, love it. Now, I know we don't have very much time, so I have to move pretty quickly beyond the house that I thought that we were going to get to. I want to get to 224 North Monroe. This one is powerful, and many of you know him, know this person that lived here, and I want to spend a couple of minutes spending time on sharing my story and what I know about him. When we rode here the last time, we met this gentleman. He was working in his garden, and as you can see, it looks like a beautiful community garden. Let's see who's watching. Hey, Vicki. Hey, Lynn. Hey, Rodney. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Okay. So if you notice, this beautiful greenhouse that's to the left of me is 224 North Monroe. And from 1910 to 1925, an engineer by the name of W.G. Lamb lived here. And then in 1927, the person I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about, which is Professor Arnett Mitchell. You guys know him? Professor Arnett Mitchell, Dr. Arnett Mitchell. He was the principal of one of my alumni, Champion Middle School. Now, of course, he wasn't the principal when I went to the school, but he was the principal there for 38 years, excuse me. And he lived in this particular home. We're gonna knock on the door and see if they know much about their history. And see if people have been home. Look at there. Now I don't do dogs, okay? So let me take a look first. Oh, I think we're safe. Oh, this is so cute. Can't you imagine a principal living here? And it looked basically the same. Look at this cute porch. And you could probably see him doing his notes and reading on the porch. This is so much fun, you guys. Hey Latrice, thanks for joining us. Hi Thomas Moore, thanks for joining. We are here at Dr. Arnett Mitchell's home, who was the principal of Champion Middle School for 38 years. he honestly was just a rock star in his own right. He was born in 1889 in Gallipolis, Ohio. He graduated in 3 years from Bowdoin College, cum laude. Real smart gentleman. He was the 4th African American to enroll as an undergraduate there in the college. Mitchell studied abroad in Germany. A principal studying abroad at that time. He taught English at Tuskegee. He was also the dean of academic department at Southern University in Louisiana, so hence why he was called professor. And then in 1921, he became the principal at Champion Junior High School, which later became middle school, which was the name when I went there. But I think it's pretty unique that at a unique time, we had such an amazing leader, intelligent, world-renowned leader teaching African-American children. Hence why my daddy probably so smart. My daddy just was so smart. Well, nobody's here, which may give me some time. What's our time looking like?
42.
32?
42.
Oh, 42. Ooh, I'm over. Okay. So, I'm going to give you guys just a quick rundown of a couple of the other houses so that you can know just for your own knowledge. Mr. Mitchell had just talked about this. Or no. Y'all know I'm trying to get these names right. I get them all jacked up once I start talking.
Terry.
Mr. Terry, thank you. See? Good cameraman with memory. Mr. Terry had just talked about his neighbor who was no longer there, but we will share a couple of information that we have about him. That is 190 North Monroe Avenue, was owned by Fred and Emma Churchill in 1925. And Fred in 1930 was a city street cleaner. And Emma had a catering company that she ran out of the home. Their children's name was Raymond, Robert, and Virginia. So those were just a few of the homes that we're trying to show you as we venture through the city of Columbus. Primarily, we're stopping in the beginning, or we're starting on the east side of Columbus because much of our Black stories began here. We're on Monroe and Long, but we're going to be going over to Jefferson and down the other streets where there is some other valuable legends and where they lived. And we actually know a few right now. But we're running out of time, and I want to make sure that you guys are aware of all of the ventures that we have going on. And not only with History in the Streets, that's going to air at 5 o'clock every Sunday. Did you guys take note of that? But we want to make sure you guys are aware of Breathe. You guys know that it's a organization that continues to fight and stand for equality. Our job is not over. It actually is just beginning. And the organization Breathe is something you can get involved with to be a part of. If you're interested in understanding white privilege or wanting to get involved in a group that explains understanding white privilege, we definitely have that group. We have voters registration, youth advocacy, philanthropy, police brutality, inequality, and politics and judicial. So it's really important. Whatever your passion is, we have something for you, but we have to keep this conversation going, and history is only the beginning of the conversation. We have to make sure our legs does the rest, okay? Next, we have Columbus Black History page. Continue to share that. We have Columbus Black News beginning next week at 6:30. So following this show will be another show called Columbus Black News. It's another way for us to link and communicate through one source, okay? So, and that's really important as our community continues to grow. And then, you know, COVID. For those of you that still are thinking it's skeptical and being skeptical about it, thinking that there's some false I don't know the right word, to it. It's not. I lost my dad to COVID, although he was struggling with other ailments, but it definitely is a game changer. Please take social distancing and wearing our masks really seriously, okay? So every week at 5 o'clock, you guys are joining me with this show called History in the Streets. I'm your homegirl, your lifestyle expert, and your local historian, Rita Fuller-Yates. And guess what? Guess what? I'll see you next time.